Most of us think all English tests are the same. You treat a school test like it's the SATs, but that's a dangerous mistake. In our recent workshop, our test prep specialist, Coach Dennis, broke down the difference between high stakes and low stakes testing. Understanding this logic gap is the only way to ensure your child doesn't just study English, but actually masters the system that gets them into top global universities. Watch how Coach Dennis identifies the gatekeeper mindset you need to win.
So I'll be talking about the standardized English tests that are offered internationally. I have been doing English, international standardized English tests for about almost 15 years now, mostly for Cambridge. And I've also trained for the Pearson test of English and also for the occupational English test, which are high stakes tests for study, migration, and the like. So I'd like to present the different types of tests that you can review with here at the English group. So let me just switch the slides. So there are a number of tests that the English crew could help you review with. So we can begin with the TOEIC test, which is a test of English for international communication. So this is a low stakes test. Um, this is not usually used for migration. It may be used in certain situations for study, but for migration and the like, you would need to take the high stakes tests. And one of those tests would be the TOEFL test from ETS. Similar with the TOEFL test is the IELTS, or the International English Language Testing System, offered by Cambridge. And another test by Cambridge for medical professionals is the occupational English test. So if you would want to say, for example, go to the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and the like, or even in the United States, and you're a medical professional, then this would be the best test to take. Another test that is quite popular nowadays, which is completely online, is the Pearson test of English. So this is also a high stakes test, and this is completely online. The results could be available in as quick as maybe a day or maybe just a couple of hours. The other one, which is a relatively new test, is the Michigan English test offered in the United States, but this is also a high stakes test. And the English test created by Canada is the CELPIP, or the Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program. So this is also online. So this is offered in just a few testing centers around the world, as this is usually used for migration in Canada. But for general purpose uses, we you can take the TOEFL test, the IELTS, and the Pearson test of English. All right. So here at the English crew, or the tests rather, the the major tests, the high stakes tests, the one in red, would basically assess your reading, listening, writing, and speaking skills. So, for example, for the Pearson test of English, they would measure the four skills using a completely artificial intelligence system, while for the TOEFL test and for the for the Michigan English test and also for the IELTS test, they use a combination of human markers and AI markers and the like. All right. But for the TOEIC test, they basically measure your speaking abilities. That's why it's not really yet acceptable for migration, for instance, and for study in general. Right. So here at the English crew, how would we prepare you to take these tests? So one, we would start off with assessing your language proficiency first to check where you are when it comes to your proficiency in the English language. And then we will provide you with an overview of the test, discuss its parts, how the tests are scored. Now, these tests don't have a passing or failing score because Your score, your passing score would depend on what is required of you upon application at the embassies and at the learning institutions and the like. All right. For example, for IELTS, the slide scoring would be from 0 to 9. For TOEFL, for example, it's from 0 to 120. For the Pearson test of English, it's almost the same. All right. Now, after providing the test overview, we would now discuss the essential skills needed to achieve your target score. So, combined with the results of your language proficiency assessment, we would now discuss what other lessons you would need to take before we actually go into doing the drills that come from authentic materials from the test makers themselves. Eventually, we would help you be equipped with test and language skills. So usually this, depending on your language proficiency, this may last from, let's say, a few weeks to a couple of months so that you'll be able to hit your target score. Okay, now the target score that you would need to hit also varies again, depending on the time that you applied for, say, for example, a student visa or for an immigrant visa and the like, right? Now, if you're traveling, of course, to other countries, you don't need to take these tests. But if you would want to study in another country or live there because you have a plan to marry somebody, so that kind of test would usually be the IELTS life skills test or the Pearson test of English life skills test. All right. Afterwards, we'll be providing you with exercises and student mentoring to monitor your progress when it comes to doing the exercises and if you're actually scaling up when it comes to your proficiency in the language. Finally, we will expose you to a simulation of the actual testing environment, which is a huge factor when students take the test. All right. Why? Because some students somehow suddenly encounter a lot of test anxieties when they step into the testing environment. So even if they're actually ready to take the test, they sometimes not perform to standard. Okay. Now, during mentoring, what do we often do? We would provide a personal assessment of your proficiency. Another thing that the English crew would do would be to create personalized lessons to address language deficiency. All right. So we won't jump into doing these exercises, but we will focus first on your language deficiencies so that you'll be able to do the exercises properly and be able to achieve your target score. On top of creating personalized lessons, we'll be providing remedial lessons in the event that you don't reach your target score after taking the test. All right. So basically, those for when it comes to the standardized English tests, those are the major tests that the English crew could cover and help you with.
As Coach Dennis just explained, you cannot approach a high stakes test with a low stakes strategy. It's about logic, not just vocabulary. If your child is preparing for SAT, IELTS, TOEIC, or TOEFL, or any international school entrance exam, don't leave their future to a general tutor. Let's audit their testing rhythm. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code you see on the screen and book your 15-minute audit.